Muhumuza, sometimes I have difficulty introducing you because you've done so many things. You have advised the Minister of Finance. The Minister of Finance, but you still teach.
Yes.
And you do consultancy. You've worked with PricewaterhouseCoopers. Very nice to have you.
KPMG.
KPMG.
Thank you very much. Glad to be.
Very nice to have you. We'll be discussing the audit report into the Bank of Uganda. It was ordered by a committee of Parliament and has unearthed quite a lot on the closure of banks by the central bank over the last 20 years. 7 banks have collapsed, and I was trying to check with people who know earlier this afternoon, and they told me that when a bank has been closed and its assets liquidated, the chances that that bank can come back up and survive again are very, very close to zero, or do not exist. But what does that mean for the central bank as a regulator? What does that mean for the banking sector in this country? We'll also begin our discussion with a brief detour on the return of Robert Sentamu Kyagulanyi, aka Bobi Wine, the Member of Parliament for Kyadondo East constituency, who returned to the country on Thursday. And unlike as had been anticipated, the confrontation and clashes with the security forces were avoided because he was picked up at the airport and driven straight to his home. And as over the last few days, he's been able to visit the family of Yasin Kauma, the man who was shot in Arua, one of the victims that are part of the beginning of all these clashes and his international stardom. Let me start with you, Peter Komolot, and ask, is there a story to discuss about Bobi Wine's return?
How can you ask that kind? His return is a story, of course.
What's the story about his return? People go out of the country every day and come back.
That he became only the second person to be received from the tarmac other than the president and chauffeured by so because he's a ghetto president and then there's a president of the Republic of Uganda, so the two of them.
He wasn't shaking hands on a red carpet. There was no lineup of all the important people in this country.
But more seriously, I think in the wider context, it's sort of I think I've said somewhere, if this was a soccer match, at halftime it's 1-1 between President Museveni and Bobi Wine. Because for the better part of the last month, Bobi Wine had been sort of on a winning streak, dominating the media, local and internationally. But the way it was handled on return kind of reduced the ability for him to dominate the media, especially with images that would have. Obviously, the president knows if Bobi Wine had been allowed to move from NTV to Kasangati, it would have been just another story that we would almost think. I think it would have eclipsed anything the country has possibly seen. So it was a smart move on the part of the government to at least dampen his media spotlight. And so as of now...
But they succeeded, you think?
Yeah, as of now, he's not having the kind of spotlight it was. Most of social media is not saturated with Bobi Wine stories. So he now has to reinvent himself. Of course, he's been doing some rounds which are still keeping him in the news, but he needs another big bang. He needs another big bang.
Dr. Okida, I'm asking you this conscious of the fact that you've been associated with the Forum for Democratic Change before. There was news circulating that Bobi Wine has kind of shifted the spotlight of Dr. Kizza Besigye and the FDC, and that the FDC especially is lost for how to respond to the Bobi Wine phenomenon.
You know, I've said this before, that this country does not have parties. This country, no party in this country has got members. And because there are no members on each party, no party can claim majority of people, especially those in the villages and those you see in town. What you see are supporters. Now, supporters come with objective. 1, they want a quick fix. 2, they want excitement. 3, they are angry of something that they want sorted. Members are different. I've heard you discuss ideology. Those are the members. They have cards. They know why they belong to that organization. Now, the majority of Ugandans are supporters. Now, if FDC, since 2006, call it that way, it hasn't offered what these people want. they are now looking for something. And if it's Bobi Wine who is going to offer them that, to keep them excited, then they will go with him. I've watched NRM people claim that they have 11 million members. When it comes to an election, they get less than 6 million voters, people who vote for them. So that tells you a lot. That not even the NRM, which most people have claimed to be a mass party, does not have members. They only have supporters. Now, people tend to associate with people with whom they feel they are doing the right thing with. And I think Bobi Wine, this morning I was in Karamoja. Next to where I was, they were playing Bobi Wine's songs. Deep in the farm where I went. And I was like, okay, they are not listening even to Mr. Museveni here, but they are listening to Bobi Wine. Now, that emergency, he had already created an awareness of himself. He has a sound almost in every man's house. Now, when he comes and is a politician, it's not necessarily that people would vote for him, by the way. No. It is that people are excited that one of their own is taking on a big part. It's like a smaller child punching.
What are the chances he can use that art music celebrity to turn it into nationwide political capital? I know you're going to say, or many people have been saying, because he won his own election in Chadondo East in 2017, that he's been his role in Bujiri, his role in even Jinja Municipality East, and more recently in Arua Municipality, give him that kind of national profile. Can anybody be confident now, or people who support Bobi Wine, be confident that now he represents that alternative national figure, the way President Yoweri Museveni and Dr. Kizza Besigye were able to do over the last years?
I can ably tell you that if there was an election, Bobi Wine might not even be number 3.
What number would he be?
But he can influence. If Bobi Wine came and said, Muhumuza, you're the flag bearer, and people look at your profile and say, yes, this guy is, Bobi Wine can remain a kingmaker. I cannot underestimate him at that. But I don't think that people have settled for him as a president or a presidential candidate. I don't think so. But he can influence. You've heard of people who they call the kingmakers. Kingmakers sit back and determine how things play. Now, I can see Bobi Wine taking that position in this country because the majority of Ugandans, probably 79% to 80%, are young people. In that bracket, you can vote. If you went into the demography of our voters, they are there. If you look at the Bugiri elections alone, majority of people who voted this gentleman, Basadra, were young people, up to about 67%. If you go to Arua, you find the same scenario. What that tells you...
But that's the demographic of the country.
No.
Yes.
It's the opposite of what you have always seen. Young people never even wanted to associate with an election. Now, where young people today are joining that effort to change leaders within their community, it's partly his effort. They have been awakened.
You had a measly turnover in Arua. I mean turnout in Arua on voting day. The NIM has complained about it, but if you look at the numbers, it was a by-election, like many other by-elections. Yes. To be fair, that has a very low voter turnout.
That's yes. Okay, but no, most by-elections don't go beyond 50%, by the way. But you want to look at those few who came to vote. Who were they? The old women did turn up. The young people turned up.
Just before Dr. Muhumuza comes in, I know you can split a lot of hairs on the chance of Bobi Wine. For me, I can assure you, If there was no Yoweri Museveni on the ballot,
Yes.
Bobi Wine would most likely win the next election. But of course, like everyone else, his chances end at the steps of Mr. Yoweri Museveni. Because of
Why do you think? Why do you think Museveni is so incredible that no one can challenge him?
Well, the history speaks for itself, so I don't have to think.
Dr.
We
Muhumuza,
have all been here in the past elections.
the Bobi Wine wave, will it win? Does he want to become a kingmaker? Does he actually focus on taking the thing for himself? What we are seeing on social media circulating is what appears like a very well choreographed effort to present Bobi Wine as an actual somebody who can take over. And some people have looked back at President Yoweri Museveni himself and said the Bobi Wine of today is the Museveni of the early 1980s, the late 70s, through the 70s. So there isn't much difference that I mean when you scale them together, if Museveni looked at Bobi Wine, he would be looking at himself
30 years ago.
40. About 40 years ago.
Yeah,
he'd be looking at himself. So why, what do you make of the sentiment of the two gentlemen that he can be kingmaker, but he may not take the thing for himself?
Yeah, I think that's what most people are not reading into the current move. Because I think Bob is just a face of an emerging new dimension
In politics.
of discontent. And people may want to push him into the party line of saying, let's go on the ballots, and you appear on the ballot. Now that will mean he will need to have a party. And like Ona has said, that route he will end up as a number 2, 3, or 4, 5, but definitely not number 1. So that route doesn't come in. Now the new route that is coming in is actually of a movement, not necessarily a party. And there, as you have seen the way he has come up, and I don't think it is even his own making, it's just the reading.
It's spontaneous.
Because he will go to Ntungamo, Rukunjiri and support an FDC. He goes to Bujiri and supports Sejema. He goes to Arua, he supports an independent. He himself is an independent. So he's kind of trying to play the kingmaker role to say what are the issues here, who has the biggest chance, as long as that is not of the movement. And now that's the new dimension that is emerging, that you're no longer comparing Bobi Wine with Kizza Besigye, because those are not in the same bracket of operation. And I think that is the new emerging version of how the politics has to move to push some kind of rethinking on both sides. Because I don't think the current
Doctor,
political disposition...
Would your analysis have been different if you were making it in 1999 and 2000 when Kizza Besigye emerged on the scene? Would you analyze this differently? Because Kizza Besigye was about that time about 42? 44. Was about 44 then.
Yeah.
So he was in the age bracket of young, if you wanted to look at it that way. He created the wave and the swath of support across the country. That almost mirrors what Bobi Wine has been able to do now.
No, the difference is Kizza Besigye at that point was, and he still is, stuck into the party line of politics, which you cannot now ably fix Bobi Wine into. Trace of this party. At 1999, everybody was looking into parties to fight these battles through parties. The youth of the time, like Wakida has put it, are now different. And as I've said, the youth today are not belonging to any party.
No.
The youth then, who were possibly not even youth, because the youth at that time, many of them, as he said, were not interested in the voting. Today, they are beginning to come in. Now, these youth are not coming in to vote because they are FDC or they are movement. You have seen the unemployed, the NRM, you have seen all those discontent. So the youth are taking on different shapes, but all of them are coming from the real issues that they are facing.
Okay. Thank you,
so we are
gentlemen.
going to see a trend where the kind of the voting is going to be determined by the issues, and whoever articulates an issue will carry whoever is attached.
But of course, using
gentlemen.
hold on, using Bobby Wine's own words, he may die in the process, so you can't guarantee he will be there.
And that's why it is not his thing. The youth feel this is our thing, but he has given it a face.
So
Gentlemen, what underlies all this discussion is basically at the end of the day the health of our financial systems, the bread and butter issues,
and the economy,
the economy and the money in our pockets, because they drive in a way the political situation, the political discussion, whether we like it or not. Though even when the politics shape or can influence the economy, for the first time in the history of this country, a stinging report on a powerful institution called the Central Bank, ordered by the Parliamentary Committee on Commission on Secretarial Enterprises, COSASE. The Auditor General does a special audit into Bank of Uganda, and the findings are stinging. Dr. Muhumuza, you've associated with the financial system and the running of the economy. That's your area of specialty. Could you just give us a general, your own, what do you make of this report as broadly as you possibly can?
Well, thank God for you've given me the broad parameters, because even as I go through the report and the context, most audit reports definitely will raise queries and weak points, and that's what audit is supposed to do, to keep improving systems. So a number of issues that have been raised, you look at them like there's no inventory of this, there is no record of this, there is these things are what actually audits bring up. Now, this is not to say the institution is so bad and should therefore be condemned because it didn't do those things. An audit report is supposed to be acted upon and improve where they have found possibly you didn't have correct things. I've seen audit reports where all they are saying is you have minutes but you didn't sign them. Or in your policy you say the board shall always review itself and do evaluation of staff appraisals. You have not been doing it. Or when you do it, you don't act on your findings. Audits will always flag out those issues. And a lot of the issues that have been raised in this audit report, I find them in that category. But the context this time is different in two ways. We have just had a prolonged discussion within the country on the Crane Bank issue. This possibly since the times of Greenland and Cooperative Bank is the first time you see a big bank being closed. And that doesn't just go off like that. It will raise a lot of emotional issues. It will raise a lot of questions. And so this report comes in that context. And I think there was even a debate of saying, should we have it or should we not? Because some of the issues the audit report is looking at are in court, at least relatedly. And the matter in court is still running. So I find even the Bank of Uganda officials are supposed to provide information to the Auditor General. You find yourself in a catch-22 position, because this is partly your defense in court. Now, the moment you give it to Auditor General and he puts it out here, it's going to be a public case. So you are either undermining your defense when you go to the other side, because now you have given up some of the information to the other lawyers of the other party. So it was quite a situation that even if I was sitting in the central bank, I would have really a problem of what information do I withhold, what information do I provide. And I find a lot of the faults that the Auditor General is raising is I was not availed that report. I was not availed that report. But these are the very same things or related things that Crane Bank has taken to court. So the timing makes it very difficult to say, are all these weaknesses in the central bank, or was the central bank just looking more at a more serious case that is in court, that is coming up if it comes up, or complying with Auditor General's demands of I want this information. That for me is one side of the story. The second side, the banking sector, is not like this is an auditor's report on Makerere University, Mulago Hospital, Nile Breweries. You know, a banking sector transacts and trades differently. Determining the value of an asset you can have a price or a figure that ranges from 100 million to 1 billion. Because the value of that asset is going to be determined by, in the first place, was it a performing asset? Now, it's no longer the car you gave me or the land title you gave me. If it is not performing, and not performing can be determined by, are you paying back and are you paying back on time? So non-performing asset can just be a number of days. The asset the owner feels is still 500 billion or million. The central bank thinks because it has not, you have not paid on that asset for a period of 180 days, its value should be discounted. And already the bank is making provisions, because that asset may actually become totally non-performing. So what value are you going to give it? That is one dimension from the regulator and the bank side. The second thing is the true value of the asset is going to be the secondary market. If you think you have your piece of land, and to you, the person who brought that title, think your piece of land is 100 million, the bank will say, what is the first sale value? So to you, the person who brought the title, you say it's 100 million. The bank is going to think it is actually 70. Now, the secondary market might actually make it even more complicated to say, with all these commissions that are going on, where land titles are now being questioned, where land titles cannot be sold in that area because of other considerations, I will even give it a value of 20. So to really prove what is the value of that asset, you may not even have a procedure. And these are some of the issues the audit report is raising, that there was no procedure of determining the sum of these. We could not find the value of assets. It is very difficult in the banking world because the value of assets keeps changing depending on the circumstances.
Dr. Okida, I want to come to you.
Yes.
You closed the first bank. You closed the second bank.
Yes.
You closed the third bank, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, and a seventh. And for all these, you do not have a report that actually puts closure and says, this is what we found, this is what we did, and some of these you are investing public money in an effort to revive them or to keep them afloat for some time, or even like in the case of Greenland Bank, to compensate depositors. These are public resources.
I was a beneficiary there, so...
And so, at what stage do you account? How much time do you need to be able to say, this is what happens, and these are the lessons we learned, and this is how it will prevent?
I think, to start with, let me say I was glad to read, at least for the first time, the Auditor General's report, which seemed to me very independent and objective. The questions that the Auditor General is asking in this report points to a number of observations. Much as it puts the central bank in the spotlight, it's important that the people listening and viewing us really understand the questions that the Auditor General is asking here. He's saying, during that process of takeover, you have spent 478 billion shillings. But at the time of selling, you are selling the same institution at 200 billion, 270 billion, less of what you've spent. It doesn't make a business sense. He's also questioning. He says, how did Mtevire, the governor of Bank of Uganda, arrive at the price of 200 billion, for which they sold Crane Bank to the FCO, when actually they had not done a proper assessment of the properties, the assets and liabilities of the bank. The other question is the extravagance with which the central bank, Bank of Uganda, executed these services. And he lines out almost 459 billion shillings that was spent, and you can see who received what. KPMG received 428 million. Another anonymous for facilitation and special exercise, 720 million shillings. Max for legal advice, over 900 and something million shillings. And all this. And that even those who seemed to have done nothing actually received the money. Now, that's what the auditor does. And that's what exactly they did. Now, I want to go back to your question.
Let me just put a small disclaimer there.
Yes.
The question of the closure of particular Crane Bank
Yes.
is a matter of a court process that is
Yes.
that is ongoing. So we can't be sure
We can't
what will come out of.
Will come out of that.
Yes, what will come out of that, because
Yes.
some of this could enter into the evidence that the
Yes.
central bank maybe intends to put to make its case.
The most important thing is that Bank of Uganda, I normally hear Muhumuza say, is the bank of banks. When it is not properly managed, it has a ripple effect on the operation of the commercial banks and the operation of an economy. If you have all these banks closing, then you must be asking yourself, what are we not doing right? Let me tell you this. I was here when they closed the National Bank of Commerce
In 2012?
in 2012. And I can tell you one of the things that were being said was Crane Bank is the local bank, it is very sound and it's very good. The question, even me, I am asking, at what point did the central bank realize that this bank is not doing well?
Okay. Can we go into
How many years
So
do you need?
they gave the other bank to it.
Exactly.
Can we go into that detail after a very short commercial break? But just for the benefit of our viewers, Tefe Bank, this is the summary from the Auditor General's report. Tefe Bank was closed in 1993, and the reason for closure was insolvency. International Credit Bank Limited was the second to fall under in 1998. 18th September 1998, poor liquidity and insolvency. Greenland Bank was the third bank to fall on 1st April 1999. People thought it was actually an April Fool's Day joke when the bank was closed. The reason for its closure, insolvency and violation of certain provisions of the Financial Institutions Statute, I think at the time, FIS. The fourth bank to close was the Cooperative Bank, which also fell on 19th May 1999. This, some people, some analysts said there must be a major crisis facing the or a major crisis impending in the country. And Professor Tumsima Mtebile, to his credit, has said his ability to manage and through these things is that in spite of this, he has been able to hold the thing together, and the banking industry and the financial systems haven't collapsed. This one was closed because of continued poor performance and non-compliance with regulatory capital adequacy requirements. It was closed within a month of the closure of Greenland Bank in 1999. National Bank of Commerce fell on the 27th of September 2012, and its problem was undercapitalization. Global Trust Bank fell on 25th July 2014, undercapitalization and corporate governance weaknesses. And then Crane Bank Limited, which fell on 20th October of 2016, and the reason was undercapitalization. We'll come back into this debate, and I need to tell our viewers that we did try to reach to the central bank, and it has said it's still studying the report. They will come out with a position subsequently, and therefore they cannot be commenting or appearing in a discussion on this Auditor General's report. We'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue this discussion. We'll be right back.
Light it up. switched on.
The time for greatness had come. A young fan approached the elders in order to consult the oracle and ask the burning question: who will conquer Europe?
They will come far and wide, noblemen and kings, battling it out across countries and arenas, challenging for the crown. Who will conquer Europe? It shall remain a mystery until the very end.
Greatness awaits in the UEFA Champions League, live and in HD, only on DSTV.
When I started out, all I had was my dreams, a belief that every man deserves his own home. I got myself a mortgage from Housing Finance Bank and I built this house. I say house because it only became a home when she came into the picture. Like me, she believed we had to build our future. We had a child and needed to open a Total Treasures account. My wife's farming business was boosted with a Housing Finance agribusiness loan. My friend Brian was so inspired. He took out a salary loan and started his own hardware. The thing is, people know Housing Finance Bank to be the most reliable mortgage bank. So did I. Housing Finance has done more than help me build a house. It helped and is still helping us build a future as a family. Housing Finance Bank. We make it easy.
Housing Finance Bank is regulated by the Bank of Uganda.
Win big with Roofings AZ Colored. Simply visit any of our factory outlets or our authorized distributors near you and buy Roofings AZ Colored iron sheets. For every 1 million shillings you spend, you get a scratch card. The more you buy, the more chances of winning. Follow the instructions on the scratch card to enter into the draw, then stand a chance to win amazing prizes like a 2018 brand new Toyota Hilux, motorcycles, flat screens, and phones. In a race of quality, integrity, strength, and durability, many will dare the tracks, but only Roofings AZ iron sheets will be the last roof standing. This offer is valid from 1st September to 30th November 2018. Terms and conditions apply. Buy Roofings AZ Colored iron sheets for the last roof standing.
Roofings, strength of a nation.
You're still watching the Fourth Estate, and we're discussing the Auditor General's report into the closure of banks, 7 of them by the central bank, and the first major audit that puts the spotlight on the regulator of the banking industry in the country and the financial sector in this country broadly. Bernard Impero is watching us and says this institution called Auditor General can go on and on producing reports of this nature in most of the organizations. I look at this as firefighting instead of prevention. Where are those in charge of prevention? This government must be able to supervise institutions to avoid such embarrassments like this one of Bank of Uganda. He calls that an embarrassment. Another viewer, Nteja Simwe, sent us a couple of messages. Nteja Simu has actually sent 3 messages. The first message, Muhumuza, help me here. Bank of Uganda for 3 years running gave Crane Bank a clean bill of health. How is it plausible that such a bank would collapse instantly? Without delving so much into this audit report, it appears Crane Bank was closed for other reasons other than financial incompetence. Nteja Simu. Onapito, the general talk is that Crane Bank was closed for political other than financial reasons. What do you have to say, Nteja Simu? And the last message, how I wish you had invited Andrew Mwenda on this show. He seems to be having more information on this Bank of Uganda subject. Ona, I'm coming to you, but I think it would be unfair to focus on Crane Bank, which is the latest bank to close. Well, it was the biggest at the time it was closed, and a lot of the discussion naturally would fall to what is closest to people's memory. But these closures start in 1993, like I said earlier, with Tefe Bank to date.
Yeah.
7 banks are closed.
I thought you wanted to focus. You wanted to focus on the report. You don't want to.
Yes, because this is what the report is talking about.
Okay,
and I think also, to be fair, Governor Mutebele wasn't governor for the first. I think for the closure of the first about 3 banks. He only came in later. Go ahead.
Look, Charles, I'm sorry to disappoint you and people who are losing some sleep over this report. On this one, I'm the ultimate cynic. I almost share the sentiments of someone who sent you a message. Yeah. I don't think, first of all, there's any single public institution where the Auditor General would throw a stone and nothing comes out. So it's almost the daily menu of such reports. And then, is anybody surprised? I'm sure our viewers, some of them might even just go and sleep and say, we have had this before. You have once in a while very outrageous revelations, you know, and you don't even know how to name them. I mean, Ugandans have been following them. It's sad, but we seem to be positively living with this kind of corruption or alleged corruption that the report is pointing to. But maybe it's one side until when we hear from the bank. First of all, the bank is supposed to be really the champion of money matters. They know, and I think they take credit in many respects that they are able to control the monetary stability of the country, which is their main domain. And if it's about mentioning billions, that's nothing to them. I mean, they could have much more money at their disposal and play with. So it's really the end justifies the means. I think that's the argument, that they wanted to keep the banking sector stable, which seems to have happened. At least there was a transition to DFCU. The ordinary depositor seems not to be complaining. So to me, maybe that's the bigger picture. As for the AG being concerned about the small monies, if I may call them, that's what is always the case. Unfortunately, in this country, yeah, you and I may look at this 500 billion or so as big money, but of course it's small money in the bigger picture, especially when some people seem to look at this money as nobody's money. And that's the reality about public money.
Isn't it the question, is it actually nobody's money?
I think in a country where you have weak institutions, you have weak public corporate governance, and you have a weak electorate, it becomes nobody's money. Where is the outrage? Have you ever seen anybody demonstrating because there has been something like a bank closed or anything?
I know two gentlemen who have petitioned the Speaker of Parliament to call for a public inquiry into the banking sector broadly. And I think that if this is put to the public, because at the end of the day, it's public taxpayers' money. Of course. The impact goes to the last person. One of the gentlemen is called Nelson Habasa, and another one is called Mbabazi Pierre. They petitioned the Speaker, and I think the Speaker has received their petition. They want a public inquiry. The COSASE committee that commissioned this report, this audit, or asked the Auditor General to conduct this audit, will be looking into this report to find a way how this moves forward.
The circumstances which took us around, a lot of talk about golden handshake and all. The sky was falling because of that handshake somehow. Seems
And the only
we have moved on.
The only sky that fell was the rain, actually.
You said you are the ultimate cynic. You actually come out as exactly that.
I think what Onapito is actually presenting is that which institution in this country can we now trust? And we sit there and we say, oh, this institution is doing a great job. The Auditor General's report is there. What impact will it do? It's not going to do an impact. That's what he's trying to do.
Well, Governor Mutebile has told you, you can trust me as leader of, as regulator of the banking sector.
Yes.
And a bank as big as Crane Bank will close. And like Onapito said, the sky will not fall.
No,
life will continue. The only people who will continue to suffer are the shareholders of the bank. The rest of the economy will continue to function. Will you give that to him?
Well, I think the thing is about the trust. If you are closing banks after banks, and the people have started to question and put allegations against those questions, one of the allegations is that probably they are politically closed. I have heard people make allegations that actually Crane Bank was closed politically because Governor Chigundu was probably not on the side of government. The other allegation
is that Crane Bank or Greenland Bank?
Greenland Bank. Crane Bank, there were also allegations, and I'm talking about the trust. There were also allegations that probably he was working with certain politicians, and that's why it was closed. The National Bank of Commerce was closed, and again allegations were put that because Zimbabweans had, assets there. So once people,
a major shareholder.
Yes, once people begin to build, people begin to build this theory, then it points to one thing, that they no longer trust anything that comes from the public office.
The difference, Dr. Wakida, is that for you, you're a researcher.
Yes.
You're an economist. So you're able to go beyond the allegations.
Yeah.
And go behind and say, what was the actual health of Greenland Bank? What were the actual operations of Greenland Bank like? Were they engaged in insider lending, for example? Did they follow the regulations? What was actually happening within within Crane Bank or these other banks or National Bank of Commerce?
Most people
yes.
depend on the report of the central bank. If for 2-3 years you are giving a clean record and performance of the bank, then you turn up and say, oh, this bank has issues within a period of not more than 1 year, then people are right to question, at what point did this particular bank begin to get problems? You did not notify us. Now, that is the problem. We can discuss this report left
maybe
and
the bank could tell you, are you suggesting a healthy person cannot die? you can die when you have been healthy.
You have these closures of banks in Uganda. You had a situation in the United States.
Lehman Brothers.
Yes, 2000.
Brought the entire world economy, not just the US economy.
Yes. You had problems. Yes, it reverberated across the globe. Northern Rock, was it called Northern Rock?
Yes.
Yes, Northern Rock in Europe and all these other banks that end up closing. So is it far-fetched to imagine that a bank can turn from very good to very bad within a period of 12 months?
Even 12 months is a long time. It can happen any time, as it happened with those banks. They had also received their clean bills of health. I think we need to understand the whole banking industry. That's why I said even when people go to discuss this audit report, I'm just wondering what they are going to discuss. Because it has a lot of blanks where literally the Auditor General says, I wasn't given this, I wasn't given this. Now, this is not to say because they just refused to give it to him. But as I said, sometimes it's very even difficult to say what asset register do I give to the Auditor General. Because as I said earlier, what was an asset valued 50 million in January can actually be of zero value in March.
That's an assumption. That's an assumption, Dr.
It's not an assumption.
Dr. Muhammad.
It's a reality.
Yes, it's a reality that can happen. But is it also possible that Dr. Wakeda has called them allegations and the Auditor General points them out in his report?
Yes.
That there could be collusion within a regulator who has nobody to regulate them to deliberately devalue these assets or act the way they want because they know nobody's going to question them. There are people still crying over assets they had mortgaged to all the banks that you can imagine, from the first bank to the last bank, that whose property was lost, not because they had failed to pay, but because the bank became dysfunctional, and therefore they lost their assets because they were at that particular moment indebted to the bank. Look, this is what the Auditor General says. Management of assets of the defunct banks. Asset movement schedules for Greenland Bank, International Credit Bank, and Cooperative Bank indicating details of assets at closure, assets sold, selling price, period sale, unsold assets, performing and non-performing loans from time of closure to the year 2001 when the liquidation role was outsourced, where those were availed. However, for the period starting 2002, when the liquidation role was directly performed by Bank of Uganda, no asset movement schedules were availed. Therefore, I could not adequately verify the movement of assets of the three banks from shillings 117.6 billion at closure to Uganda shillings 19.7 billion as at 30th June 2016. And he adds, sale of assets at a discount. Bank of Uganda sold assets worth 164 billion of 5 defunct banks, ICB, Greenland, Cooperative, GTB, and NCB. However, it was noted that the assets were sold at a discount of 80%, yielding only 32 billion, as indicated in the table below. In the sale of ICB, Greenland Bank, and Cooperative Bank, the total loan portfolio sold of shillings 135 billion included secured loans of 34.5 billion, which had valid, legal, and equitable mortgage on the real property and were supported with legal documentation, but were sold to Nile River Acquisition Company at a 93% discount.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The whole question,
80%.
The whole question is on what you're saying is a discount. Because the value of the asset, as I said, is the secondary market, not the legal presence of legal documentation. For you, you have your land title. If this land title happens to be in an area that is a swamp, and government has now woken up to say all titles in swamps are going to be cancelled, it goes to zero. It's a legal document backed up, given by Ministry of Lands. When we get into the market, it is zero. So you might say you have discounted it from 135 to 34, and we're not actually discounting it, because the true value of that asset is going to be determined by the market, not the legal documentation that you have on it. And if I wanted to sell it, even if I'm buying that debt from whichever, I'm looking at what is the possibility that I can get money out of this. You all know high value vehicles like Mercedes-Benz have no secondary market compared to Toyotas.
And I think the bank, I believe, of course, is not an investor.
So the allegations will continue.
The bank is not, central bank is not an investor. I think their main preoccupation, I would imagine, is to create what I would say confidence in the economy, in the financial sector. So they don't want this to spend time without selling something that is contagious.
So of course,
they wanted to get it out of the way. And
as we are saying, because of those ambiguities, people will take advantage. Even when I know your house is worth 100 million, and there is this as is saying it needs to go off, I will give it 30. So if you are lucky and there are 7 of us bidding for your house, then we can outbid each other and raise the price. But if I'm alone in the middle of nowhere, the 30 becomes
Don't you think that the Auditor General rises here that the central bank as a regulator, owed it to the Ugandan taxpayer on whose behalf they regulate, to say this is the process we went through, because there are people who are still crying. Someone has a property up Nakasero Hill, mortgaged it to a bank. He knows the market value of that property is so much.
Yes.
It is a secured credit facility he had obtained, or she had obtained,
yep,
from a bank that has been closed.
Yes.
Isn't it fair that a report would have been required of the central bank to say, now we have finalized with the process that closed Tefe Bank. This is what we found, this is how far we went, and this is our final verdict.
Of course, as I've said,
on
process issues, the Auditor General definitely needs to know the process. But on what value you find on that asset? Because when you mortgaged it, plot in Nakasero, actually might be $2 million. Now, by the time you come to liquidate it, of course, the process should be clear. And the Auditor General, I think, as I said, some things in the audit report are for improvement, to say our processes were not clear. But what value we finally attach to that will depend on whether a security agency hasn't settled in the neighborhood of that plot, which has devalued the property. Or now in the security assessments, State House has decided to say that plot, if anybody occupies it, will be endangering the security of the president. Now that's what the secondary market is looking at. Can I buy it and build and settle there? Remember, the person, when you are taking your title to the bank, those considerations were not there. Now it is 2 years later, security agencies have determined it's a threat to the office of the president, or house of the president, home of the president. That devalues it. But the process, as you have said rightfully, should be clear. What value we get is going to remain anybody's argument.
Dr. Wakide, yes, what are the merits or demerits of giving carte blanche, a blank check, to a regulator like central bank, like the central bank?
You see, a central bank is the regulator of all the other institutions, the commercial banks. Unfortunately, the central bank is supposed to be independent.
Regulates itself.
And it regulates itself.
It is one institution where the chairman is the CEO. One thing
I want you to note in the central bank, and probably much of this report is coming as a result of this, there has been a fight in that bank. The supervisor, not long time ago, was showed a door.
Her contract ran out. Though she left 6 months before she should have left.
That can give you an indication of what was happening in the bank. In an institution that is supposed to give confidence to the economy, you don't want to be hearing those kind of statements. But let me go back to the report, because that's what we came to discuss. The report,
you touched on that. I think the information available is that her contract was running out and it was not renewable.
Yes, but it's also important for us to know that there was this fight between the governor and the supervisor. The question Ugandans and you journalists haven't helped us is to investigate what was causing the fight. And perhaps the cause of the fight is what you're seeing in this report. And I would be interested in anybody really trying to tell us what was the cause of the fight of the public officials fighting in the face of the public. It's like a mother and a father fighting before the children, and then the children do not ask, but what went wrong? That is the critical thing. The report actually makes it clear for us that, contrary to what we think, that the central bank is okay, there are problems there. And he says there are possibility of fraud. In part of the conclusion of that report, he said, in a way, it points to possibility of a fraud, where you go and value the assets. I noted that. This is the report, and I want you to hear this, that Bank of Uganda did not carry out valuation of assets and liabilities of Crane Bank Limited, for example. In the absence of that valuation, I could not establish how the terms of the terms for transfer of assets and liabilities in the purchase were determined.
That's what Dr. Munza calls processes.
No, you see, this is Auditor General. You know the functions of Auditor General is to audit government institutions. I have come with the powers of Parliament to audit you. And I'm saying, please give me this, give me this, give me this. Why would you be holding on to that information when I have come to audit you? So you cause suspicion.
If the Bank of Uganda argues and says this is a matter now before court, we have taken Crane Bank to court, Crane Bank has taken us to court, this, if we provide you this information, we prejudice our case.
That would be good for Bank of Uganda at a time like this, for them to come up and tell us those. You see, we've remained in a speculative mood.
The good thing the report is in Parliament. They will tell the parliamentary committee because you call them to ask those questions.
Yes, those are questions that needs to be answered. When I was studying economics at A level, one thing I learned, that the failure of a central bank affects the microeconomic position of that country. Even those banks or those who want to establish the banks in this country will not come.
And the reverse is true.
And the reverse is true.
You may not get a lot of answers to your questions because if you remember well, we may be discussing these heavenly matters. Remember the governor, the governor at some point said only God perhaps could remove you. These are not earthly matters.
As of now, his statement is still true.
His statement is still true, but it cannot
and not even this report will remove him.
So those are questions we want to ask. I was at the university and I heard somebody saying one of the best economists we have in Africa was Governor NTV. That's the time I was doing my doctorate. And I was proud.
Has that position been challenged?
Well, when all of these kind of things begin to be coming, you only wish and hope that they are not challenging that credibility.
But to his credit, among all the recipients, he's not listed. That's so good demand.
I think that's where we are talking about processes. And I like it when the Auditor General is speaking to processes. Because processes do not test the credibility of the governor's ability as an economist. They do not even test his credibility. And there have been this debate of whether bank supervision should be under the central bank or a separate entity, so that the central bank focuses on its core mandate of monetary policy and not bank supervision. There are actually jurisdictions in the world where the two are separate. So that is one of the discussions that may come back. And I read quite a lot where I found reasons being presented by former central bank governor.
I know Dr. Munza, look, as a layperson in banking matters, you'd sort of understand that commercial banks are really run by business people.
Yeah.
And the central bank would be more like economic experts, academics, and what have you. So the two may really be a disconnect.
So the supervision of the central bank should be subject, the supervision aspect can be subject to these regular audits. And I wish it was, if it was separate, you'd have it there. So when they talk about the independence of the central bank, it is more to do with monetary policy.
Which is perfect.
Which is perfect.
Because inflation
and in that
is low,
space, you actually want the central bank governor to be what he is, to also chair his board. But once you come to these other areas where, as I've said, there is room for complacency. You are saying your asset is valued 40 million. Somebody is saying, it is 5. And me, I'm the one to decide whether it is 40 or 5. I can be compromised. So at that point, I need to be subjected to an independent audit process. But now, because I'm hiding under the central bank where independence must be upheld for monetary purposes, not for bank supervision, you have to go back and readdress their processes. And I think that for me is what Parliament needs to go back and address.
Let me just throw this out as we take a break. Is it just a coincidence that under this very strong supervision of the financial sector, the value of the shilling has continued to decline you're not talking about 3,800 plus to $1 today. The pound sterling is closing in on 5,000. The euro is also about 4,000, and has been, and you have seen this gradual movement over the past few years. And you don't seem to see or get the confidence that there can be a reversal to this. Some cynics have, Honor said he's the cynic on the show, have joked and said that you're closing in on the situation, on the position you had in 1986 when this government took over, because I think the exchange rate at that time was 6,000 Uganda shillings for $1. The price of fuel is now trading at 4,310 at some fuel stations, at some pump stations in the country, because it's moving in tandem with the dollar. And there doesn't seem to be opportunity to pull back from that. What you're seeing in the banking sector is that almost every truly indigenous bank, especially that owned by ordinary business people, has closed shop. What you have as close to a local bank as you can get is the institutional Catholic Church-owned Centenary Bank. The rest are, for lack of a better word, foreign banks operating in this market. What does that mean? I need you gentlemen to think about that, and then we'll come back and thresh it out after a very short commercial break. We'll be right back.
Send money to your loved ones in minutes from as low as 6,000 Ugandan shillings and from a network of over 500 agent locations in Uganda to almost anywhere in the world, starting at a transfer fee of Ugandan shillings 6,000. Western Union.
What do you want your baby to become? Every parent desires to have a healthy and successful child. Wise parents know that this starts even before the baby is born. Let's hear from these parents.
I want my baby to become a doctor. That's why I'm taking time to select a suitable man. Ours will be an engineer.
That's why we started antenatal care early and still go back.
A manager.
That's why we are saving money for a safe delivery.
I want my baby to become a pilot. That's why I breastfeed my baby, even if I have to go to work.
A designer.
That's why we take him to the health center whenever he's not breathing well. We want our baby to become a musician.
That's why we took him for immunization, even when we were busy.
Give your baby the best start in life. Go to the health center for more information and support.
When your passion depends on it.
Who are yet to lose in third in the group. Keeper chose not to hold on. Good closing down right from the front. Now, byline.
And your life too. And then just avoid the uncertainty by powering your life with our extensive range of high-quality solar systems. Power your business, home and farming with our excellent solutions at a flexible credit and excellent customer service. Solar now. Power your life.
Amanya nze Semanda Dennis ndi musizi wa lanji ndi musanyufu nnyo kubanga nze muwanguzi w'obukadde omusanvu newakubadde saasobodde kuwangula jackpot essanyu ly'amaanyi nnyo badde ne pressure ya school fees w'abaana bannayuganda kyenyinza okubagamba kazannyo kaneeno bintu bya ddala pulira ndi spa.
Enter now to win 200 times your bet and get a bonus entry into this Sunday's 200 million shillings super jackpot every time you play. To play on MTN, simply dial *165 *33# and follow the prompts on your phone. For Airtel customers, simply dial *185 *4*9#. Then enter business number 33311. Enter the amount you wish to play from 1,000 to 50,000 shillings. Then select your 3 lucky numbers from 0 to 9, followed by NTV as your payment reference, and get that super feeling today.
The Daily Money Monitor brings you the 12th Seeds of Gold Farm Clinic for the Northern region that will focus on dairy, maize, cassava, rice, citrus, pigeon peas, and soya beans, with key interest in post-harvest handling, value addition, sustainable land management system, agribusiness aspects, and economics. Come attend the Farm Clinic on Saturday, October 13th, 2018 at Ngeta Zono Agricultural Research Development Institute, Lira, starting 7 a.m. Entrance is free, plus breakfast and lunch. For exhibition or more information, please call 0704-225084. In partnership with Bank of Uganda, NARO, ABI Trust, and sponsored by NTV. Brought to you by Saturday Monitor. Seeds of Gold. Smarter farming for bumper harvests.
There are so many traffic offenders who commit traffic offenses and they think because they have friends in the police, they will bail them out. This is to warn all traffic offenders never to call me or my police officers because it will not work. That is the only way we are going to reduce accidents on the road. We still need you alive. You have to comply with the traffic regulations. Trade eco. Every life matters.
This message was brought to you by Viva Energy and NTV Uganda.
Extraordinary could be right there in front of you without you even knowing it. It's something unique, rich and rewarding, full of character, a bold expression of flavor like no other. Discover extraordinary flavor. Guinness, made of more.
Tomorrow night.
Inform that lady that her innocent face can't fool a guy like me. I told her that I already know what she's up to, which is to catch a son of a millionaire, so that she can afford.
Welcome back to this last segment of the Fourth Estate, discussing the Auditor General's report into the central bank and particularly its closure of banks. 7 banks have been closed between 1993 and 2017. The last one was closed in 2016. Was that 2016? Yes, I think 2016 when Green Bank was closed about 2 years ago, which remains the subject of a court process, so we may not be able to go into much detail. But there's some specific questions here a viewer has sent, and this is a viewer with knowledge on what is going on. Ask Dr. Muhumuza, does Bank of Uganda have a responsibility to account for the management of the defunct banks?
The responsibility, because they...
To account for the management of the defunct banks.
After they have been closed. Because part of
the question is very direct.
The report, it depends on what he's talking about. Because the report is very clear. What is the mandate of the central bank? If I have a bank which has problems, and the problems you've seen, some of them is because the management of the bank is not following regulations. It can be insolvent. It can be undercapitalized. They are mainly between those 3 areas. Now the central bank, when it comes in, it can manage the bank and hand it back to the owners.
Dr. Okeda.
It can actually sell it. It can now. Where is wrong about managing of a defunct bank? When I hand it over to another bank, I've dissolved it.
Dr. Okeda, does Bank of Uganda have a responsibility to account for the management of the defunct banks?
Yes. You see, I have just told you here that these guys spent 478 billion shillings during that period when they were thinking maybe it can survive or it cannot survive.
No, it wasn't that. I think they knew it was not going to survive by the time they came.
Why did they pump in the money?
They pumped 478 billion shillings.
When you take over a bank, and this is the departure from what we saw in the 90s. Because in the 90s, Muhumuza wakes up, 1st of April, 1999, your bank is closed. I cannot access my money. I had fees to pay. I have also my money is locked up there and I can't receive it. Now the central bank improved that because at no point did the doors of Crane Bank close. People continued to move in. and pick their money and transact. But you can be very sure whoever was working in that bank was going to withdraw, not to deposit. And remember, part of the problem for Crane Bank was liquidity. So if you have taken it over, and that's the responsibility of managing it, if you have taken it over, anybody turning up at the counter has got to be paid their money. And this is not Charles coming in who had 20 million. He's coming to withdraw 3 of the 20. He wants his entire everything 20.
It's a run on a bank.
So for all that time, people are just taking out their money.
Or maybe someone will want to ask a question. Whose money are they taking
now,
out?
This is what happens. That the central bank must make sure whoever turns up is paid.
Agreed.
So it has got to bring in money because the bank in the first place was
whose money does it bring in?
Now this is public money.
Yes.
But usually the assumption is when we finally sell this bank, we would be able to recover this money and take it back into the central bank.
And when you sell that bank for a fraction of the money that you put in?
Now those are the things you work out, because at that point you are not calculating the 478 million based on how much will I sell it. You want whoever turns up at the counter, because remember, financial stability and assurance and protection of deposit funds is the central bank's business, which we said if you separate that from supervision, the issues are different. So for them, whoever came for money needs to be paid. So if you put in 30 and the 30 is cleaned out in 1 hour, you must bring another 50. If it's cleaned out in 1 day, you must bring out more. So you are not determining on the basis of what would I recover.
This viewer put another question and said, did they account? Which would raise a question or a sub-question that says, where is the evidence that the money, the figure he has quoted, is the money that depositors walked out of the bank?
You see, Charles, we are all depending on the report from Mwanga. Mwanga is the author of this report. The wording in his report are unquestionable expenditure.
Questionable
expenditures. Here he says that the Auditor General report on the closure and takeover of the bank has indicated that the central bank could have fraudulently spent this amount of money, 478 million, in the questionable takeover, after which they sold the bank at 200 billion.
I can hear some callers, and we
cannot judge whether the Auditor General's language is also not questionable. So
for me,
it is also questionable.
And look, for me, in terms of the two values, 400 for 200, I don't think the bank was seeking profit.
No.
For them, they want to take care of depositors and the stability.
And they did that job. So whether it cost them that and is questionable, that is Auditor General's language.
Okay, let's first hear from some of our callers. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Yes, please. Your name and where you're calling from? Yes, we can hear you. Your name and where you're calling from?
Hello?
Your name and where you're calling from?
Yes, I'm calling actually Ojangole.
Your name is?
Yes.
Ojangole. Ojangole, okay.
Ojangole.
Yes, please.
Yes. What I wanted to say.
Please say it.
There are very many parties which were involved in the closure of the bank. Since the closure of the bank started in the early 1990s up now. Now, what I'm asking is, did the bank have internal auditors? That's question number one. Question number two, did they have external auditors? And what was the role of the central bank to monitor the performance of the bank in Uganda?
Thank you very much. Do you have another caller? Hello? Hello? Okay. This one goes ahead and says, are you aware Bank of Uganda needs recapitalization because some of these reckless expenditures, or because of some of these reckless expenditures? And this same viewer says, has Honor read the Kosase report on the handshake? Have you, sir?
I thought I'm not talking about the report. I'm talking about the action out of the report.
And the cynicism that goes with these things.
Unless if they have a report which shows the action that the man has been recovered, the people have been taken.
I have a caller. Let me pick this caller. Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Your name and where are you calling from?
Andrew is my name.
Yes,
I'm
Andrew.
calling from I wanted to contribute to the show.
Go ahead. Andrew, you're listening? Andrew, turn the volume on your turn down the volume on your TV set because you're getting an echo. Yes.
Now, in my own Andrew is my name. I'm calling in from
Sure, go ahead.
Now, in my view, like my boss to my says, he would have expected if Coin Bank, some of us have consumed all the services of this bank, but Coin Bank was really a very efficient bank in terms of different transactions. So, like, why we think it was fair to close it, like my boss said, did anyone walk to the bank and claim their money and they didn't give him their money?
Who's your boss? Is your boss on the show here or somewhere else?
I'm sure he's actually listening in. Because it was some of us, in terms of the services the bank was offering, was really a very competitive bank.
Okay.
But our question is, did anyone walk to the bank and they ask for their money and are able to get the money? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Well, Andrew's boss who's listening maybe should call us and tell us. There are 4 guys here listening, including others. Does the bank have an option to withhold information from the Auditor General? By the way, it is criminal to withhold information. And I think this one makes a promise that when the report, this report goes to Parliament, it will be discussed in open forum.
Yes, it will.
Yes, it will. I have a message here. Yes, a message is, gentlemen, what lessons do we draw, if any, from the 4 major objectives of of the American Glass-Steagall Act, Banking Act of 1933, which seeks to separate commercial and investment banking, prevent securities firms and investment banks from taking deposits, and commercial Federal Reserve member banks from, number 1, dealing in non-governmental securities for customers, investing in non-investment grade securities for themselves, underwriting or distributing non-governmental securities, affiliating or sharing employees with companies involved in such activities. Of course, we have our perennial challenge of political will and institutional functionality. But what benefits would such an intervention help our market economy with? That's a question from Andrew Karamaji. The economist, can you help?
No, I think I want first to help Andrew.
Andrew the caller or Andrew Karamaji here?
No, Andrew from Barara. Banks have got a threshold of operation. And there is a point for which they say, you still have money, but you are falling below the threshold of 50%. Now, once the bank realizes, the central bank realizes that this bank is falling below the threshold we set, then the central bank immediately moves in. Even when you, the depositor, you can still get your money.
Yes, you'll not realize, you're not supposed to face that.
You cannot realize that. But they immediately realizes that, no, this bank, given the way it's operating, in the next 2 or 3 months, it will not be able to meet the depositor's needs. So they will immediately come in to take over.
Okay.
Yes, to guarantee.
I'm afraid I'm being told that the time is pretty short. We need to be getting out of here. I'll take this message. Someone is watching us and said, you mean there is no woman in the whole of Uganda intelligent enough to join that usually men-only panel? Like, seriously? We'll have to deal with that
internally. Or else you will face an audit.
Internally. And I also take a message, I'll take this last message because we need to get out of here. It's a disturbing message that's been posted on Facebook by the Kasese woman member of parliament. It's outside the discussion we're having. And she says, please Pray for me and my family. On Friday nights, 2 armed men spent the night in my compound in Kasese, waiting for my husband to come home, and they shot him. Some friend of ours tipped us, and he did not come home that Friday night.
That's winning.
Yes. As I am posting this message, again, 9 armed men in military uniform have surrounded our house again in Kiborara, Kasese. All of them armed to the teeth with machine guns and RPGs. This kind of situation has been around my Kampala residence too in the last few weeks. Whoever they are after, God is watching. And whoever is in charge of this scheme, it must be put on record that I and my family are Ugandan citizens who are entitled to all citizenry rights. I don't know whether my husband will be alive by morning. In God we trust. We pray that the devil is ashamed in this whole scheme. I read this message because it's beginning to trend on social media. I'm seeing it, I'm picking it up from many different platforms. Gentlemen, unfortunately we've run out of time and we need to get out of here. Ona, does this take us anywhere? Does this have an impact?
Well, it takes us somewhere. I'm sure the bank is serious enough to take note of, I don't know that it's criticism, at least something is being pointed out, so I'm sure they will try to right what is wrong. But in the bigger picture, I think we have institutional decay generally across board, at least public institutions. We have a broken moral structure, I mean, really, and a lot of ethical problems across board. And if you don't deal with those issues, which are, in my view, are societal, there's little law can do.
Okay, thank you.
There's little law can do.
Dr. Okida, where does this take us after here? What next? It's another report that was
I think we have to keep praying that our economy improves. Today, we have a very bad economy. The measure of the health of an economy is when your currency is increasingly getting value. Anytime you see your currency dipping, then you know the economy
is in trouble.
Literally, you will know there is a problem, especially in a country where consumption is 40% foreign.
Thank you. Dr. Muhumuza, your last word on this. What next?
Linking up the two, what gives banks their value? Because the assets of banks is literally the loans they have given out.
Yeah.
These loans are as good as the state of the economy.
Yes.
So if the state of the economy continues, you will even see more other banks face these same problems because their asset values are going down. And remember, the liabilities, which are the deposits, are not going down, because if I put my 20 million, I want my 20 million.
Thank you. I'll take this message from Lincoln Sayuni because it came very early. He says, whereas under capitalization of banks and other contraventions of financial laws is dangerous to the economy, in the long run, the central bank can do better by creating a conducive environment for the already trading banks to keep afloat and deploy stringent requirements for new banks to get into business. Otherwise, closure of banks reduces trust and in the population, trust the population have in the banking sector. Well, Lincoln, I think we have one of the strongest banking laws. They've been increasing the minimum.
And we still have trust in the banks.
Yes,
because
everybody, the banks still continue.
From Crane Bank, everybody moved into another bank
to perform.
They didn't abandon the banking
Gentlemen,
system.
I want to thank you very much for making time for the show. I want to thank all our viewers. And I want to end on a sad note. The death rate among professionals has been quite high. The professor who discovered Mac pads passed on during the week. Mac pads, which help girls to stay in school. I think it was buried during the week. Professor Musazi. And this morning, the country woke up to the shock death of Professor Albert Timothy Rugumayo, Isimwa Rugumayo, son to Professor Edward Rugumayo. He passed on this morning, I think in Fort Portal, which is a very sad day for the country.
It's quite sad,
Fort Portal, to be losing people at that rate. Thank you very much, Dr. Okida. Thank you very much, Dr. Muhumuza. Thank you very much, Ona Peter Ekomroy. Thank you very much to all our viewers for joining us tonight and always. Thank you very much to the production crew that stay up late to deliver the show to you. From me, it's a good night.